I just used to pray for my mom that, one day I can make it so that I can give her a taste of a good life. Nobody in my family ever thought my dreams could ever become reality. So I committed everything, however crazy. Even if nobody else bought into it, God and I bought into it, and that was enough. I was saving, knowing that one day I will fly out. Even if it's once and I die, I'll have flown out. I'll own a car. Even if I drive it and it crashes, I'll have owned a car. And I die. My life would have been complete. First, let me just say this. For anybody who's ever been at the crosshairs of family hostility, rejection, betrayal, loss, death, abuse, and all that and more, would probably understand where I'm coming from and would probably understand the power of resilience and the power of faith. Things that you cannot see, that you can't touch, but they're really the wind beneath your wings, so to speak. Because that's exactly what my life has been, because really when you're born rejected already, what's your purpose for being here, right? When you're born, you don't know that you're rejected because you're a baby. But when you grow up old enough to understand you've actually been rejected, you don't ever get to know the dude behind your birth or your being here, and you never get to see him. And then you go around life with ridicule in your community, and then you're violated when you're so young by those people that should be there to actually protect you. And you don't know, you don't have an outlet, you don't know who to tell. And so you learn to kind of deal with your own issues when you're so young, but still put up a smile and look like everything is going well. Because if you dare act up, then you're beaten up for being, rebellious in the family or being disrespectful. When you don't have a platform or an outlet to tell anybody about your misfortunes, you wonder, what is life all about? And so you kind of just grow and learn to cheer yourself on and put up a smile when you really are crashing on the inside. And I believe, like they say, experience is the best teacher. So with time, the longer you live and the longer you know to do that, the longer you know to cheer yourself on and up, the stronger you get on the inside. And especially when you have that foundation, like I said earlier, faith and resilience that comes with it, that it's not tangible, but only God can give you that. So really what I can say, Justus, is that my life has been a life of so many comebacks, resilience, and all fueled by faith, all thanks to my grandmother, who is resting in peace, I believe, who just gave me that foundation, not knowing how far it would take me. And the love and the laughter with my mother, who is also late. I enjoyed life with them, laughed with them, loved on them, took care of them. They left, and I'm still here, loving and laughing and continuing to bounce back. I was born to a very young single mother, and she, I guess, just delivered, maybe breastfed me for a while and disappeared. I grew up knowing my grandmother as my only parent, my grandmother who was also a widow, so really I had a lot of odds stacked up against me. Things that I did not know until much later, actually, probably about 10 years ago, that I knew that my father had lied to my mom that they would get married. I was the second born in a family of two. And the guy had misled my mom as a young girl that, hey, we're going to get married. And like any young girl in the village, really, that was like a desire. That was like a statement of success and achievement that your you're married, you have a husband. That's really what's like, wow. And so having been a Sunday school teacher, and then she was violated and misled to become a young single mother, that was, of course, it wasn't a very good picture for the family. My grandmother was a very well-respected church leader, religious leader, community leader. And so for that to happen there, it was kind of like, what can I call it, a dishonor to the family. But unfortunately, I mean, we're here. I mean, my brother and I are here. What do? You can't swallow them, right? You can't swallow us. So my mom was forever hustling, like now they call it hustle. So for the most of my childhood, 18 years of my childhood, my mother, I would see her once a month. She would be gone to look for something and, earning meager, earnings, working in a children's home. And then my grandma was raising us, so there was no male figure growing up. And so as you can imagine, there's a lot of ridicule in the community because, again, here you are, you don't know who your dad is. You go to school, you're told to bring your father, your grandmother shows up. So children laugh at you. And, so I grew up with that, feeling rejected. I didn't know it as rejection at the time, but I knew there was something that felt off. So like, how come we don't have a father? How come we don't see? But you don't ask. You don't ask. Those are conversations that are not talked about. Nobody brings it up. You don't know where to bring it up because my elder brother didn't start it. So how do I start it? So what I remember is kids would say, you don't even know who your dad is. When they say that, it really stung me. I've never known how it came across from my brother. He's not very expressive. And so I would never know what he felt or if it even made him feel anything. But so we were growing up and I'm wondering, okay, why is it our family setup didn't look like every other? But one thing I thank God for is that woman that I call my grandmother gave us a very solid foundation in the Word of God. Every day. There are days we went without food, Justus. There are days you'd wake up, there's no, we were in the village, so it's only firewood. So there are days you don't see any smoke in that kitchen. And you go to school. We were lucky when it was mango season because then you eat mango for breakfast, you eat mangoes for lunch, you eat mangoes for dinner because at my grandma's it was like a mango forest. So you just wake up in the morning, go pick it, wipe up, and eat and go to school, come for lunch, pick some more, eat and go. But then the other days when there were no mangoes, for example, we'd go to school. We're expected to bring lunch to school, but you have nothing. You can't bring what you don't have. Now, the worst part about that is not that we didn't have the lunch, is that we would get punished in school for not bringing lunch. How do you beat up a child who is already hungry? The child is not responsible for whether or not there is food. And so we'd be beaten up for that. So, we had to devise a way for avoiding the punishment. So we would get tins. Like back in the day, we had tins of Cerelac and like the KCC powder milk, just any tin we could find. So we'd fill it up with sand. And so when you stand at parade to be inspected if you have lunch, the teacher just picks it up. If you say, oh, okay, it's a tin and it has something, pass. So you don't get punished, but you're still hungry. So you go and if you have good friends, they might share their cold ugali and sukuma wiki or ugali with pumpkin leaves or something. Sometimes we run home. Hopefully there's something. We find there's nothing. We come back, Some days, then when grandma is lucky, she may have found some beans and she makes githeri. And so by lunchtime, she'll surprise us with a hot meal of boiled githeri. And that was amazing. So we went through that. But like I said earlier, she raised us on the Word of God. Every evening we had to have a Bible study. Every evening, everybody gets to read, everybody gets to lead prayers and lead the reading of the Bible. And so we all learned how to read the Bible when we were very young. And then she would sit with us, bless her soul. She would sit with us to do a night study. I did not like it because I was so busy dreaming about a life out of that village. I wasn't really focused on the books because I'm thinking, okay, we are here reading and then what? We're just here. Really, I never could think there's a life in that village. So I used to dream about a life away. Luckily, as a young kid, Grandma was, like I said, a leader in the community, and so she hosted missionaries. And so the occasional times I would encounter missionaries at home, my curiosity started like growing. Why do they look different from us? Where do they come from? They only speak English. And I want to talk to them, but I don't know how to speak English. They don't know how to speak Kikamba. Swahili is really down. So I wanted to really communicate with them. But so somehow we found a way to talk. I think I used or I learned sign language when I was very young. Because that was the only way we would talk. So we'd sit by the fireplace and we'd talk. And I don't know what they were telling us other than I would be curious and ask them where they come from. And I always remember, I think I was like 6, 7 years old. And I remember they would say they come from overseas. Every group I met overseas. So I grew up knowing there's a country called overseas. One day I want to go to that place. And by faith, because Grandma made it look like if you trust God by faith, anything and everything is possible. Oh, this and that, He will provide for your needs. He's your Father. But I would wonder, this Father that never provides, we go hungry. So because the food part wasn't quite coming through, in my mind, I kind of lived with this clear path that one day that overseas might just become reality. I didn't know where that was. So we went through life. I played with boys. I didn't know how to play with girls. I only had a brother. And so because he's my big brother, wherever he went, I went. They played football. I played football. We went hunting birds I knew how to make slingshots. We made slingshots. We hunted birds. We're out there grazing the cows and goats. We would hunt birds, and then we would just light a fire in the bush and defeather those birds and roast it and eat it. We have a meal. And so, because you don't even know what to expect when you go home. So fast forward, we continued like that. And from there's some things that were unfortunate that I went through as a young kid from the year 9 years old, thereabout. We had relatives live with us, and some unfortunate things happened to me. And I had nobody to tell. And I just kind of had to continue living life. It's like I said, I really learned to cheer myself because some things are shameful. And in our society growing up, children were not to tell on adults. Even if an adult has beaten you up, you don't tell. Much less imagine when they've done the unspeakable. You don't tell. Would you tell? It's very embarrassing, so you carry the shame. And so I carried a lot of shame, struggling with my childhood. And I remember, because we were in the field, in the farm, we would work a lot in the field. When we are not in school, we're either tending to coffee, or we're tending to animals, or we're tending to maize in the field, or fetching water, or fetching fire. We were just doing a lot of manual work, like most village kids do. And I remember when I think I was 11, thereabout, 11, 12. And I would wonder when Grandma would really emphasize on learning how to till the grounds and, learn how to farm well, learn how to bake sweet potatoes. And I'm thinking, why is it so important anyway? My brain is not even here. And I remember she would say one time, if you don't learn how to work in the field well, if you don't learn how to bake sweet potatoes well, who will ever marry you? I thought to myself, is that what I'm working so hard towards? And I remember at 12, thereabout, I know I was not a teenager yet. And I remember asking Grandma, what about school? I mean, is that what we are going to school for? I don't know where I got all that from, but I challenged a lot of things that challenged the family because I would ask questions that nobody else had ever asked. And I would ask, why are we going to school? Just so that I can become married? And so I made a conscious decision. I will not put much effort in that farm work. I will not put much effort. I will be lazy, if you may call it that. And so, of course, I was not a very popular child among my brother and now my cousins who had come along, and we were growing up together. So they worked harder than I did in the field. And most of the times you could find me in the field, and instead of digging, I'm holding on to my djembe like this, and I'm really dreaming about that overseas thing or a life away from that village. And then I thought, if I were to get married, it's going to be in this village. I grew up in the village, live in the village, get married in the village, die in the village, get buried there. So I had to cancel that and change that narrative for myself from the time I was very young. And I remember at 15 years old at a youth camp, at home when we would do Bible studies, I was also kind of rejecting God in a way. I felt like this God we are told is our Father, but we are struggling. We are ridiculed for not having a Father. He has everything, but yet we are suffering. We don't have much. I really didn't see what sense there was in believing and trusting this God. I felt like he'd let me down. Let me say for me, I didn't know about the rest, but I felt like he's letting me down. I used to think too much. And I would ask Grandma, why is it that the Bible is talking about, fatherless children, children outside wedlock, they will never enter the kingdom of God or the assembly of God. And I'm wondering, what's the point of even going to church? And she would try to hush me on that. And she would give me Psalm 68, verse 6. He's the God of the widows. He's the father to the fatherless. He's your father. But I'm thinking, yes, but we are struggling. I felt like she's just saying all this to cover up and so that I never have to question my mom, for where is my daddy. And when I was 15 years old, we went to a youth camp and a guest speaker spoke on that same scripture. And I remember when he did the altar call and he said, if you've ever felt like you're worthless because you don't know your father, you don't have an earthly father, this message is for you. You do have a father. You have a purpose for being here. The fact that you're here, whether your daddy is present in your life or not, God has a purpose for your life. And I went down bawling and I cried and I cried. I don't know why I was crying, but I came forth and he prayed for us. And I kind of started feeling like I have a glimpse of hope and a glimpse of, purpose, really. I didn't know what that meant, but I felt like maybe Grandma was right, that I do have a father in heaven. One thing is I loved my mother. I never felt anything against her, even though, we hardly saw her, like I said, but once a month. She would come home for 5 days, and those 5 days, she would make sure they count. My mom would come home and clean up everyone's dirty clothes. She would mend everyone's clothes. We had very few to choose from anyway. And so she would make sure they're all stitched up and mended. And then she loved music, so she would play very loud music. She had this record player. And so she would bring the batteries and she would set it up. And for those 5 days, everybody in the village would know Sarah was home. She would blast it loud, and then, we didn't have this subwoofer and stuff, but she was very innovative. She would put the speaker on a clay pot, and boom, boom, man, that music really was. So the village was in for a treat every time my mom came home. And then she would tell us stories, and she would sing with us. I mean, she was fun. Really, to me, I grew up treating my mom like our friend or like a sister or what she was. I even called her Mweni. I never called her mom. And she loved it. We would just have a fun time. And she would read stories to us before we went to bed. So it was really fun to have her in that setting. And so fast forward, I went through school, high school, looking for that path out of the village. And so I was conscious about who would be my friends. And I remember I didn't want to befriend other villagers in school. And so even after high school, I was very conscious about who I want to befriend. I kind of could see the kind of life I aspire to have, and that's what I was attracted to. And so I befriended people who had that kind of life. So after school, I was in the village. Again, I'm thinking, okay, I'm done with high school. Now what? I didn't scoop a very flashy grade in high school, but I knew one thing: overseas and a life of success was right there in front of me. I was like, I never lost focus of that. Back in our days, we didn't have mentors. We didn't have anybody telling us this is what you can do to succeed. All we were taught is how to cram to pass history, how to cram to pass geography, how to master a certain formula to pass math, and then what? And then what? The most prestigious careers during my day, and especially for girls, were teachers. There's nothing against teachers. We need teachers. That's why we're where we are now. But it's like there were just three mainstream careers that were especially associated or mapped out for girls. Being a teacher, becoming a secretary, and the other one is not really a career, but really becoming a wife. Especially if you're a wife that is a teacher, married to another teacher. Oh, wow. That family is very highly esteemed. Whew, so I don't know, for some reason, none of those appealed to me. Except when I was about 9, 10 years old. My grandma, I used to talk a lot. And I used to feel like I have to talk to the family, and they have to listen to me. I used to envision myself like sitting in front of them and like I'm telling news, like I'm doing a news presentation. I just dreamt of things out of this world, because occasionally I would get a glimpse of TV life. I would come to Nairobi from the village when I'm coming for dental treatment. And I would have a chance to spend 2 or 3 days at a relative's house where I would see a TV. And I was like, wow. So I go to the village and I want to act like I'm the one in that TV telling news. And sometimes I would be there acting like I'm teaching, the village kids and even my cousins and my brother. And I would make sure that I command their attention. I want them to listen to me. So Grandma used to say, you will become a great teacher. Either you'll become a great teacher or maybe a singer, because I loved singing. I still love singing. And I used to think, teacher, maybe in our mind, she envisioned a teacher from a different perspective. I was very unexposed. So the only idea of teaching was in the village, where I would just see teachers on a chalkboard, and the classes were not appealing. That was not a very appealing career. So I never thought I would want to become a teacher. And a musician, a singer, I didn't know. I had never known a singer until after high school, when I now, was in Nairobi and I could see, oh, wow, people actually sing and get paid. And so I'd think, wow, yeah, I could see myself doing something like that. But now then they had a leash on me, like they don't want me to be exposed too much. It's like they're going to lose me. And so that probably, was their fear. And of course, I never had a lot of exposure with celebrated singers or musicians. But like I said, I pursued friendships with people that came from affluent families and backgrounds. That didn't sit very well with my family, because in a way, I think, and I remember my mother expressing her fears. It's like, these people you're spending time with, these people you're befriending, you can't afford the kind of life that they live. And she probably feared that I could become a victim of maybe prostitution, I don't know, in a quest to live that kind of life. I had never thought about it that way. I just felt nice being, able to visit a friend, and in their home they have a dining table, they have a TV, and she has her own bedroom. And we can have, a nice meal. I remember I came to Nairobi, and I lived with one of those families that, were doing well, really my only family members that were considered to be doing well. Except I was not allowed to enjoy or to partake in their well-doing. I was there to serve them with that. So I really just served and toiled and enslaved in a relative's house for almost 2.5 years, 2 years. Was never allowed to enjoy the dining table. I was never allowed to enjoy family time in the living room. So I would only catch a glimpse of the TV, during the day when I'm working. And again, so that didn't sit well with me. But it was good, because it fueled my dreams of one time having that life for myself. Not having anybody to mentor me and coach me through and tell me how I could become that. I became my own coach. I became my own mentor. I became my own trailblazer. I blazed my own trail, because my mom at the time had lost a job at the children's home, and then she was a custodian at the city council. So there was nothing to admire about her career. In fact, I just used to pray for my mom that, one day I can make it, so that I can give her a taste of a good life. She lived in a very small room. It was about 8 by 9 square feet. And in as much as my relatives lived in a standard family house with 3 bedrooms with a dining table and a living room and a kitchen and garage and a car and all that stuff, I never enjoyed any of that. So I never enjoyed even being there. If anything, I longed for an outlet, a way to just get out of there. The only way I went there was because, again, I aspired to live a good life. And so I'd been duped, and my whole family had been duped to believe that by being there, I could find a way into, a career, a nice, maybe a college education or something to open doors for me into the world of my dreams. I slaved and toiled for 2 years. Not one day was I ever taken even to be introduced to an office where I could make tea for the office or even clean the toilets of an office. I was never given one chance to interview even for the lowest entry jobs. I became a slave in that home, cooking and cleaning for the people that would come, and they're taken and they're put into the workforce, and I'm left there. After those 2 years, I devised a way to run away, and I did. And so I ran into my mom's little room. I had read scripture during my toiling years there. I think it was Proverbs 23, I believe, somewhere. It said that it's better a boiled meal in a little house or a little room than a feast in a home where there is no love. And I felt that's exactly where I was. And so I chose to run into this little room where there's love, even if we eat boiled skuma every day. And so I moved, and my mom at first was trying to push me to go back to my relative's house. And I said, no, I am not. So what are you going to be doing here? She wondered, now, she had never known how to live with me. She had never raised me. So she didn't know me. I didn't know her. We're there. And I'm a young adult, and now she's there, doesn't know how to deal with me. But I was determined not to go back. I was moving forward. And I knew I wasn't going to be in that little room for too long. Again, the choice of friends was a threat to my family. And I remember my mom and my brother pushing me to go and take secretarial classes. I did not want anything to do with being a secretary. I just didn't know what I wanted to be, Justus, but I knew I did not want to become anyone's secretary. And I was like, I'm still finding my way. It's like being in a forest, in a maze, and you don't know which direction you're going, but you're moving forward anyway. And the only way was to really spend time with people that were going somewhere that looked remotely like where I wanted to go. And so the only condition became that if you're going to stay in Nairobi, you're going to join this secretarial course. If you don't do it, you're going back to the village to be with grandma. And I love my grandma, but I'm not moving back to the village. So I took the stupid secretarial course because that's the only condition. So I took it. My brother borrowed a book for me. I mean, my mom couldn't even afford the textbook for the class textbook. So he borrowed a book for me. They put me in that secretarial course. And then I said I wanted to study French as well. French, I figured, would set me up for some foreign exposure somewhere or adventure. So they put me through French. And so my mom said, yeah, now then you can become a bilingual secretary. She was getting a lot of advice from her friends who would tell her, oh yeah, she could become a bilingual secretary. I could become anything bilingual, but secretary, no. So I religiously attended my French classes because I chose that. But the secretarial that I didn't like, I attended classes for about 3 months. And the 4th month I quit, but I didn't tell anybody. Now, my mom would have to borrow money for that course. I think it was 400 shillings a month. And she would have to borrow that money. She would have to supplement her expenses, which included rent, which was also 400 shillings, sometimes which she was late to pay. Buying food was a problem, so most of the times we were taking skuma wiki from across the kiosk on credit. Everything was like we lived on people's accounts, really. So one time, what actually made me quit that secretarial course? A friend took me for coffee. And, you know, she was one of my friends from affluent families. And she took me for coffee. At the time, it was called Nairobi Coffee House. And we went there. And I remember seeing, there was something about TV. TV to me was a classroom. I saw a show that it was a storytelling show, and it was really fun for me. From there was a comedy, Martin Lawrence show. And then after that, there was another one of living single. And so we had a wonderful time. We went home. Another time, just randomly, she took me for coffee again. So, by the way, those days I would go for coffee. That would mean I skive my secretarial class for coffee. And yeah, I chose that anytime, because how many times do I get to go for coffee, right? So we went for coffee again. Those shows happened to be on. And I remember asking a waiter, what days of the week do these shows come? And she said, it's Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. 4 o'clock is the Oprah Winfrey Show. That's a storytelling show. Then there is a Martin Lawrence, 5 to 6. And then 6 to 7 is a living single. A life that I just saw, and I said, that's the life I want. And so after being taken for coffee twice, convinced me that it's time to drop that secretarial course. And every month, the 400 that I'm given for that course, I would take it to the coffee house. So I would take myself for coffee, and I would go and sit, enjoying a pot of coffee that I've bought for myself. Felt like I'm in heaven. I mean, it's a small pot. I think it was about 50 shillings or so at the time. And if I'm lucky, I'm able to afford it with a samosa. It felt like I'm in heaven. I sit there and I would nurse that coffee until it's cold, but I'm enjoying my shows. And then at the end of the course, the last show of Living Single is when my class should be ending. So then I take a matatu and go home. So every day I'm carrying my little red bag. I still see it to this day, like I'm going to college, but I never opened that bag for 4 months. So after drinking coffee on 4 months worth of course money, my mom was giving me money for the 8th month. That would have been my 8th month of secretarial training. So I'm sitting on this chair, and my mom is sitting on the bed, and she stretches to give me the 400 shillings. And I tell her, Mom, I think I'm going to quit that course. I don't feel like I really want to continue. She looked at my brother, who was just at the door, and said, from the sound of that, sounds like that college was dropped a long time ago. I don't know what made her think that, but she was right. So she said, okay, then give me, I have a lot of debts to pay. I said, nope, I'm going to Gikomba to buy a dress. I need to go buy something for an outfit. And so she pled with me, but I refused. And so I kept the money, and I sure went to Gikomba, bought myself a ripped pair of jeans and a shirt. Long story. From there, that was the end of me and any pocket money. So nobody would give me pocket money. Nobody would give me anything because I've quit college. But I continued with my French classes. And in the process, I also went looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. I have no college credentials, but I'm looking for a job. So I looked for a job. I found a job as a street vendor. I was hired by Light Food Industries that were producing sandwiches. So my work was to hook them in a basket. Every day we would be dropped, a bunch of us in town, and you walk office to office, door to door, even anybody walking by. You try to sell, and you're paid nothing until you sell. And whatever you sell, you're given 10%. So if you sell 50, you're given 10%, 5 shillings. Very, very rarely did I ever make even 20 shillings a day. And that was my bus fare to work. So every day I'm asking for bus fare to go to work. And I'm making nothing. But at least I wake up and I have somewhere to go. I remember seeing one of my bosses at the time. She was a Kenyan American, and I admired her car. She had a red car. She was a single mother of 2. Had a red car. It was a Toyota Celica. I've never forgotten. And I said, my first car will be red. I can make 20 shillings a day, but I will buy a car one day. And so after 6 months of not selling anything, I quit. But then the office called me back. They loved my character, and they called me back. Meanwhile, I had dropped from my French class. I had no focus, just as I just wanted a life. And so I dropped from the French class, where I had actually been selected to go to France because I was doing so well, and we had an advanced diploma for 6 months to be done in France. But I dropped that, and I let that go because I have this little salary of 2,000 shillings a month. I was like, wow, I'm going to make my own money. So I went, took that job. I worked there, and after about 5 months, the company collapsed. So that was the end of my employment. So after this company collapsed, I go to that company where I had applied to be a typist, and they had not responded. So I went there 3 months since my application. I went to know why they had never responded to my application. I didn't know you can apply and not get an answer. I imagine if I've asked for a job, you have an obligation to tell me either I have the job or send me a regret or something. Someone should have communicated. So I went there and I found a typist there. Obviously, I knew my job had been taken. And I said, I want to see the manager. And I saw him. His name was, no, he wasn't there that day. His name was Mr. Ayuko. So I was told, Ayuko. Mr. Ayuko. I said, okay. When can I come back? So I was told, I didn't have a phone where they could call me. So it was up to me to try. So I walked back there. And I walked to Thika Road from Gara. I went there and I found him. I said, I've come to check. I had applied for a job. It's been over 3 months. What job? And I said, I wanted to be a typist. And so he said, as you can see, we've hired somebody. We have a copy typist. And he said, what was your speed? I said, what speed? He said, what was your typing speed? I did not stay long enough in college to know that you work to build a typing speed, which becomes one of your qualifications to become, hired. Anyway, so he gave me a challenge to take up another job. They hired me as a revenue controls, revenue and procurement and revenue controls. I was given a job to deal with numbers when I had an excellent grade in mathematics in high school, and I had never taken anyone's accounting course. So I took up the job, and I did pretty well, actually. People loved me. I guess it was just God had just gifted me with a smile, with a personality that people would just fall in love with. But I did not know what the hell I was doing. So I learned on the job, and I became pretty good at it. And after working there about a year and a half, they threw a shot on me. So there was a shortage. Somebody went into procurement, and there was shorted 2 crates of beer, and it was going to be put on my salary because that's my department. I said, but that short happened when I was off duty, but they still wanted to impose it on me. And so I said, in that case, I quit. You can deal with it. And I quit, not knowing where I'm going to go. But again, people that had met me there on that job, when they heard that I had quit, they sent for me. I went to meet with them. They were college lecturers at Utali College. And so I went to meet with them. They said, why did you quit? And I told them the reason I quit. They said, no. Would you like to work in another hotel? I said, yeah, but doing what? I had no clue. They say, could you work in a nyama choma ranch? I say, yes. There is nothing I couldn't work at. You asked me, can you do this? Can you sell ice in Iceland? I say, absolutely, I could do that. So I said, yeah. And the next day I had a job. I was sent to Ngong Hills Hotel, and I was sent to work at the nyama choma area. I had never worked in a nyama choma area. I had never handled cash. But here I am. So I'm working here. It is so smoky. It is so hot. You stand on your feet all day. You deal with some real arrogant customers. I mean, you're dealing with some of your staff members. They are stealing from you. I mean, I had come from the village, and I was still, they say you come from the village and the village is still in you. I mean, I was just overly trusting. I wasn't sharp. Like I hadn't really dealt with Nairobi enough to wake up. So Nairobi had become my school, so to speak. So here I am, and I remember there was this guy. So we had the meat display. So I'm standing there to sell the meat to the customers. They pay. I keep the meat. I keep the receipts. At the end of the day, I must balance those numbers and the sales, returns, and whatever. If there's any losses, I'm responsible. Remember, I quit the other job because I couldn't handle a loss which was imposed on me. So here, sometimes we would sell meat. I sell an arm, and a client has maybe asked they want it fried. Our lead choma guy was really swift. He'd come, he could be selling to another customer there, but he's listening to what this client is saying. He wants fry. He's probably doing a choma there. Immediately, the customer goes to sit. Before he goes to sit and before he pays, this guy comes over here. We'll just call him Juguna for lack of a better name. He'll come and say, hey, tell the customer, oh, you want... unataka kafanywe nini, kafrai, na nini, na kienyeji na nini, okay, fine. Unaketi wapi? I'm sitting over there. And so this guy would say, don't worry, don't pay now. You'll pay when I come. I'll bring you the accompaniments and then you will pay then. So the client will go sit down. Juguna would take that meat and put it right back in display. I'm like, what are we doing? He said, did you come to Nairobi to look for money or to just watch people making money? Wachana na hiyo nyama, nitaona vile nitafanya na customer. So he would go back to the cold room. He would shave a lot of the shavings, the cold room, that are left in the cold room for staff lunch. And then he would go into the dumpster, the trash can, and pick bones that had been consumed by other clients. Wash them properly, cook them with those shavings, and then make a very delicious meal for that client. So we'll sell this arm 2 or 3 times to different clients. Now, the money that we get from there, Juguna would distribute between him and the other staff, as long as you can keep your mouth zipped. That was going against my ethics. And in as much as I loved being there, I didn't like the smoky area. I was eyeing an opportunity to probably become a waiter one day or something, out there and deal with clients. But my stint there was very short-lived. After a while of really being on my feet and conflicting ethics here, I quit. Again, I quit without knowing where I'm going. One of the clients that they'd become a frequent flyer. Every Sunday they were there, so they'd come to really like me. And so I met them while I was on this transition, not knowing where I'm going. I've quit. I'm in town on a Sunday afternoon. I'm walking in town. I used to go to church, and then from there I would go to town and just really do some shopping. Window shopping. That's the shopping I did. And so I was out there, and I meet them, and they say hello, and we chit-chat a little bit, and they say, are you in a hurry? I said, no. I said, no. They say, would you like to go for lunch? I said, yeah. And so I get into their BMW. I've never ridden in such a car, and we go to Italy Hotel. I'm treated to lunch in such a prestigious place by people who were once my clients, and they had become friends. These are people who had lived abroad for years. So I felt, wow, this is the kind of life I've always envisioned. So while we were having lunch, they asked, how's your job going? I say, I quit. They say, what are you doing now? I said, nothing. And so they say, have you ever worked in an office, like a front office? I say, no, but I could. They said, when would you be available if you're given a job? I say, anytime. Can you come to work tomorrow? I say, absolutely. So from lunch, I had a job the next day. So I showed up. I had never trained for any of the jobs that I was doing, but I was training on the job and learning a lot through my mistakes. So the next day, I went and reported and started working in a front office. I'm dealing with a switchboard. I had never seen a switchboard. I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with clients walking in, and I became the face for the company. And this was in the IT industry. And so because I'm dealing with clients, I'm dealing with the technicians, I'm dealing with my boss and all that, I was very curious about what was going on in the workshop. So I started stealing moments when I'm on break or when I'm not busy at the switchboard. I'll go to the workshop and started looking at what they were doing. In the process, I was also getting promoted. I became the support coordinator, and so and also the import coordinator. So I was the one dealing with suppliers. Within 3 months, I'm dealing with suppliers in America, suppliers in the UK, suppliers locally. I'm dealing with foreigners. I never dealt with anybody overseas. Now, by that time, I had been learning that there is America, there is UK, there is Germany, there are different countries that are called overseas. I mean, the overseas is a place. I mean, it's not a specific place. So my lenses were clearing up. So I'm beginning to kind of know the world. And so I'm talking to these people, I'm thinking, wow, maybe one day I could be working there in their office. Wow, you know. And so anyway, to me it was inspiring. At the same time, it was, what can I say? It was like spinning my gears. You know, I'm like, I wonder how it's like to be where they are, where I'm talking to them from. But then I cannot go there unless I know something that can take me there. I mean, I felt like you have to be this very educated person to really ever live and work with the white folks. But I never let my dream sit or die. It was gaining momentum every step of the way. So in the evenings, I started following these technicians in the field. When they work for the company in the evenings, they go to do their side gigs, and I would follow them. It was in Luthuli and River Road, very scary, very, very scary places where the clients could not afford corporate rates. They want computers repaired, they want services, but they cannot pay the corporate rates. So they pay the private technicians' rates. So I followed them. You know, some places Justus would have to creep in. Like you can, it's an office that has another office above where, you know, somebody has, Nairobi is something, where someone has created another floor above their rented space. So you creep in there to go and fix a computer and creep your way back down. And so I kind of learned different parts of the computer, how they work, how do you diagnose, how do you repair. And I could see the money that these technicians are making, and I thought, this is an easy way to becoming rich, really. You don't have to go to college. And so I learned in the streets. And before long, I knew how to diagnose basic computer problems and how to fix them, how to source the parts and how to charge for the services. During that time, I was like, I'm looking for my next adventure. I'm ready for my next adventure. And so in this company, I believe in blessings from parents and elders. My great-grandmother at the time was 125 years. And she had, you know, there's a story that they had done. She had been featured as the oldest in the world. And then this time when I'm in this, you know, dilemma, I really need a new adventure in Korea and this and that, she'd called to bless our people. I asked for permission at work. I was denied. And I decided I will go anyway. Now, there was a company that had been looking to hire me, but I didn't know how to quit. I didn't have grounds to quit my current job, you know, to go start somewhere else, although I knew I needed a new adventure, but I wasn't sure that that was the right place to go. So I decided this Saturday I'm not coming to work. I'm going for this family blessing. And I went, and I knew my boss very well. If you did that, you knew the next thing you're coming, you're getting a summary dismissal. So I went that Saturday, got my blessings. We were all blessed. And I wrote my resignation. I didn't know if I would have the job at the other prospective employer. But again, I felt like I was on my stairway to my overseas dream, because if I stay at one place, I will never see, you know, what the next stint would bring. So on Monday, I came back to work. I had my resignation letter in my hand, and sure enough, I walked in and I was handed a summary dismissal. I told the secretary gave that to me, and I said, I know what this is, but before I open it, please give this to him. He said he doesn't want to see you. I said, that's fine, but give this to him. And so I'm going in to clear my little things that are in the office. I open the letter, it's a summary dismissal. He's given my letter, he opens, it's a resignation. He says, can you tell Rosemary to come in here? He didn't want to see me. Now that I've resigned, he wants to see me. So I go in, he's like, so I see you've decided to resign. I said, yeah, but I've also seen the summary dismissal. He said, where are you going? I said, I don't know. Remember when he hired me, I didn't know where I was going. So even now, I just believe there'll be another door opening. And so he said, oh, so you don't have another job? No, I don't. So what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. but I'm leaving anyway because you had dismissed me anyway. And so we shook hands and I left. Where I was going was, there were distributors. So they used to sell us things while I was employed here. Now I'm going to quit, so I'm most likely going to be selling to my former boss. So I left, I went to that place and I negotiated a good price, a good salary, actually a pretty good one. I negotiated a salary 3.5 times of what I was earning here. And they took me in. They had been wanting me anyway, and so they didn't know I could quit here because they also knew I was very settled there. So I went and told them the only condition is if you can give me this much, and they gave me. I went in there. This was owned by Canadians, and I felt like, closer to my my outlet here. So I worked with them for about 8 months, and after 8 months, I quit because, you know what, you won't keep from me what's mine. I'd worked, I was put in the sales and marketing department. So I had 3.5 times of my salary and a percentage of commission on top. And I was quickly making good money. So it became like, they felt like this is too much to give you, but that's what we agreed on. I mean, if I'm making my base salary and my commission is way above my salary, I've earned it. So they're withholding it. And every time I would ask for it, it's like I'm taking running corners. And it got to a point, I'm like, okay, I quit. And you will pay this. But now they knew if they're going to pay, it might involve the law. And they don't want to go into that direction. So I remember I quit. They called me. They say, can we walk away? No. I knew. I had worked with them and I knew what they can do. And I noticed, I had observed what they would do, where if they don't want to pay you, they'll take you around in circles, and finally they'll find a way to fire you and then withhold whatever they owed you. So I said, no, I'm not coming back unless you pay me my money. And during that time I quit. Remember about 3 years or 2 years before then, I had learned how to make a little money here and there, selling computer services, selling parts and this and that, on the streets and after work. And so while I was with this employer, after work, I would go and do this after hours things. And on the weekends, I would do that. And I was beginning to make some good money. I mean, I was able to make almost my salary after hours. So I thought, how about if I focus on committing my time fully into this street gig where I could just be a street vendor. I mean, I have an office that is mobile. I'm the office, I'm the secretary, I'm the technician, I'm everything. And so that's what I did. And very comfortably started making pretty good money. I remember the first contract I secured was at Studio House in Yaya Center. And I was given a job where I was paid 50,000 to do networking. And I thought, what? I got a contract? I don't even have a company name. So someone asked me, why don't you just go and buy a delivery note and an invoice book and make a rubber stamp with your name? And that's what I did. I bought a delivery note from a textbook center and an invoice book. And I went to River Road and I had a rubber stamp made. Rosemary Nzembi, P.O. Box, dash, I didn't have a P.O. Box. Telephone number, dash, I didn't have a phone number. So I had to physically walk into my client's offices, sell, physically walk in there, invoice, physically walk in there to claim for payment. But I had all the mileage in me. I was young. I mean, I could walk anywhere I wanted to go. I didn't even own a purse. I didn't. Everything was in my pocket. And so when I got that job, luckily, the company that I had just quit, even though I had quit, we still maintained very good relationship. And so I would go there and get goods on credit because they trusted me. So I'd go there and get goods on credit, on cash. There's a book where I would just sign and I will pay when I'm paid. And the arrangement was with my clients is they would pay me in 2 weeks 2 weeks after invoicing. So I was given them material. Now, of course, I had never networked anybody's office. So I went to the technicians who I knew what they were doing. So we would do these jobs after hours. So in the evenings, we were at Studio House, laying the cable and clamping them and terminating and everything. We set everything. In 4 days, we were done with the work. I invoiced, I was paid. I paid the technicians, I paid my supplier, and I was like, this is not bad. And so I had now the confidence to walk into any office. I went and bought myself an organizer so that I look professional. And I went and bought a few, secondhand clothes from Kikomba, at least a skirt and a blazer, so I look, presentable. And I would walk into any office and ask for a job. One of my clients, it was an international company again, and they really came to like me. I mean, they would order anything from me, services, goods, what. And that, my former employer would give me anything. I would get orders for 150, 200,000, whatever. I go get the goods, deliver, invoice, I'm paid now. One client, I remember, my major client was, at the time, Davies and Shutcliffe. That's a big, big account. Now, I went there, and I did not have a company name, remember? Now, I was asked to bring a quote. I did not know what company name to use. So one of my clients had a company name. I mean, it was a computer company, but they used to buy parts from me because they didn't have the sources that I had. So I came and they agreed that I can use their documents to bill my clients. I think it was called Technotech. I still have those documents to this day. My mom reserved those documents, bless her soul. And so I went and I quoted Davies and Shutcliffe. They gave me the LPO. I serviced it. I billed it. They paid me. Boom. Banked it. I was like, whoa. When you begin getting checks in the tunes of 200,000, and what, in 1998, I have no certificate from anyone's college. I have no business name. It's time to get serious. And I'm like, really, my journey abroad is imminent. And so after working with someone else's invoice books, I had many advisors from the streets, some good, some bad. So one came and told me, you may want to register your own business. If this guy one day ever refuses to cash and give you your check, you will take him nowhere. Because you're the one that invoiced in that name, right? No one twisted your arm to do it. Why don't you register your own name? And you know how in our system it can be hard to register a name. And so I went to Sharia House and registered. After 2 weeks, I didn't know the way it goes. I didn't know about greasing someone's hands to get registration. So I keep going back. I'm told we can't find your file. So one woman saw me. She was a cleaner. And she called me the side and she said, wewe unajua hapa lazima unajua mtu ndio upate hiyo makaratasi. Si mimi sijui mtu. She said ndakuonyesha mtu. So she showed me some guy. He was a messenger. He used to wear a dust coat. He was an old toothless guy. And so she introduced me to him and said, huyu ukiongea na yeye, hiyo file ataona paliko. And for sure, in 2 weeks, I had a business name registered. It was called Rompack Services. And so Rompack, now I could comfortably and confidently walk into any office. Now I have my own business name. So because I was still operating on a thin budget. Yes, I'm banking good money, but I'm not going to pay anybody, any printing company. So I went and designed my own invoices, letterheads, delivery notes, business cards and everything. I did that and printed them. So now I would walk anywhere with my business card. You know, when you have a business card, it speaks multitudes. And so most of the ones that I went to, would give me repeat business and everything. And many of them were people that were international companies or they are foreign owned and whatever. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. My first trip abroad was after doing this for about 1.5 years. I said, it's time to taste this money, And so I bought a ticket and I went on vacation. I went to South Africa. Nobody in my family ever thought my dreams could ever become reality. Because their dreams for me were to be a teacher, secretary, wife, period. And I grew, as I was growing older, my faith was also growing bigger. And I believed that God's dream for me was greater than even what I could dream or imagine, because we're told in Jeremiah 29:11, I know the plans that I have for you to give you a hope and a future. And when I was 19, when I was at that home where I wasn't allowed to watch TV, I wasn't allowed to experience a dining table, how it feels to even enjoy that. I remember at that time, I grew so close to my God because I had no companion in that house. It was the loneliest time of my life after leaving the village. I was in a family's house, but very lonely. And that's when I discovered Proverbs 16:3. Commit your plans to God and everything you do will succeed. I took that literally, And I would tell God, you're my Father. You own everything. You have a plan for a future to bless me and to give me a hope and a future. And if I commit my plans to you, everything will succeed. Everything. So I committed everything, however crazy. Even if nobody else bought into it, God and I bought into it, and that was enough. So I was saving, knowing that one day I will fly out. Even if it's once and I die, I'll have flown out. I'll own a car. Even if I drive it and it crashes, I'll have owned a car. And I die. My life would have been complete. So, actually a year into starting even before I started before I quit to start my self-employment, which I had already started, I had done some deals for 3 months and made about 95,000 shillings. I bought my first car at 95,000 shillings. It was actually in Rongai. And I did not know where Rongai was. Now that I was saying, actually I came to Rongai. It was a bush back then. I didn't know my way. My brother, we boarded a matatu. I didn't know how to drive. I had a license, but I didn't know how to drive. When I got the license, my mom used to ask me, whose car are you going to ever drive? I say, my car. I will drive my car. So I want to have a license before I get the car. So I had owned a license for 1.5 years before I owned a car. And when we went to Rongai, we just had to ask where you take, I don't know, matatu number. I can't even remember the number. And we went with my brother and we found a car. It was red. And I said, because my first car had to be red, I bought it. It was a sports Alfa suit. It was an Alfa Romeo Sports. My brother drove it. It was 40 as they come. I mean, number one, it had a borrowed battery, so it was jump-started, and we didn't know this battery is dead. We were only told, it's just because it hadn't been driven, so the battery is dead, but it's going to charge. The alternator was defective. It was, I don't know what it was doing, but it was drinking fuel, like a drunkard on beer. But you know what? It was my car. I owned a car. And the first time I drove it, we drove up country, and the first time I got behind that wheel, I crashed it. It was written off. But it was really a write-off, but I was determined to bring it back to life. And so I spent some money, brought it back to life, but I was too scared to drive it again. So I gave it to my brother. So you can have it. I'll buy another car. I don't know when, but I'll buy another car. So about 1.5 years later, now that time I had been doing my own things and I'm making good money. And so one of my clients at the time was looking for a business partner to do IT. He was doing other businesses, but IT was so lucrative at the time that he was looking for somebody that he can go into. He was going to be the investor. I was going to do the operations. And so we came and talked. I had been serving him. He'd come to trust me, so we had this mutual trust with each other. And so we sat down and he said, put together a list of items, parts and everything that we need to bring, and roughly what the cost would be, and let me order those things, and let's do business. I said, bingo. I mean, it's a no-brainer. This means I will have an actual physical office, because where else I was sharing a space with some people. And so I gave him a list, and within a few months, he ordered parts from Dubai, and the shipment arrived. He says, here is a shipment, here is a way bill, you factor it, inventory it, cost it, sell it, pay me 50% of the profit, keep 50%. I didn't have to invest. So I was making 50% out of zero investment because he doesn't know what to do with the parts, but he knows there's money, and there was money. And so it was in Cannon House, and so was there, and so around the same time he got into politics. Actually, thinking back, that was in 1997. He got into politics. And so you know how politics is, it just milks your cow and milks your cow dry. So every money that you'd get goes into politics, campaign, campaign, campaign. My work is to make money, his work is to spend it. Before long, we weren't making enough to fund his campaign demands. And so he comes and says, Rosemary, do you want a car? You know, I'm dreaming of owning a car, and hopefully this time a new one. I said, yeah, but I don't really have the money. He goes, we can make arrangements. I say, I don't have the money. He goes, here, because he was also importing and selling cars. He said, look, I have 5 sports cars. If I can sell just one, you know, I want to really get into this office. He was campaigning to become an MP. He goes, you can buy a car, we can make an arrangement. And because, you know, you're selling, we're doing business. The computer business is doing very well. And you know, now I'd incorporated services as well, not just selling the parts. So he goes, you choose one of the cars, and we'll make an arrangement, an agreement, so that whatever you're making, your 50% of your 50% here goes towards the car. Still, I'm going to own a car out of this investment. I said, really? Yeah, let me go think about it. So I thought about it. Next week, 2 weeks, I'm under pressure. Within a month, he boxed me in and I succumbed. I said, okay, I gave in. What car am I going to get? It was a Toyota Starlet Turbo S. And that time, that was really the car to have. It was the car with the young, you know, business people. It was, I mean, cruising this town, tinted windows. I mean, it was amazing. So I agreed and I took a car. Again, I still hadn't mastered my driving skills, but I took it. I called my brother and I said, can you drive this car home? So he took it and drove it. Went and parked it at my friend's place because I didn't have a safe place to park it at the time. And now it meant I had to move and move to a secure environment, secure neighborhood. And so I started paying for my car. So, and I said, he said, I don't even want to make anything from you. Here is a way bill for the car. So you just pay me the landing costs. Basically refund me my money. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And so I took that car and I moved to Old Race Course, rented an extension there. And so I was parking the car there and driving just within the neighborhood because I was too scared to leave and I couldn't drive on the road. But I started doing very well. And continuing my business, I'm doing this with him. I'm selling services, and money is coming. You know, I'm doing pretty good. And after about it was about 2 months, my car ran out of fuel. I was either going to get a jerrycan and go to Total and get some fuel coming, or I was going to bite the bullet and drive out of the estate and go to the gas station, fuel it, and come back. And that would be, I've been able to drive on a Nairobi road. So one day I braced it and I drove. Let me tell you, it's Lee number 9. They're mad people, and so I was driving into them. And so I had to like fight to drive past or alongside them or whatever, get into the gas station, and I did that. Meanwhile, my feet were shaking. I managed, I came back. Now from there, I said, now I must drive across town one day. So I picked a Sunday. Sundays were usually not very busy. So I drove to visit relatives in Woodley on a Sunday. And I bundled my friends into the car. They knew I didn't know how to drive. But everyone is so excited that their friend has a car, a new car, and we're going to be cruising across. So we cruised, we went, and I remember my uncle saying, you guys trusted her to what? We had fun and drove back before sunset. So long story from there, I got my L sticker and I started driving in Nairobi. Now I started and gained the confidence. Now I was able to now walk even into bigger offices because I walk in, pull out my car keys and an organizer, put it on the desk. Now I'm asking for business. You'd give me any. I'd walk into banks, I would walk into big insurance companies and country clubs. I made good money. I said, it's a good time to, again, see what else I could do. Now, around that time, I got a contract. My business started, that's around the time now, I'm going to go back a little bit. That's around the time now that I went to South Africa. So anyway, when I went to South Africa, one of my clients, one of the international clients, had sent me to buy some parts, and they didn't give me money. So I went, bought. When I came back, I gave it to them, and then they paid me with interest. They say, we wanted to see if you can actually use your money and trust us and buy the goods and come in and bill us. And while we're talking about that, they say, we're looking for a general manager. And you've been serving us and we've been liking your services. And would you consider taking that job with us? I said, I still have my business. Granted, now, the time I came back, I had lost a few clients because I left my business. I would never do that again. I had lost my business to a competitor because I had given somebody, I had left someone to babysit my business. But, when your clients are used to being given a certain kind of customer service and they don't get it after you're gone, they start looking elsewhere, and that's what had happened. So I had lost a few clients. So I've come back. I'm still in business, but they want to hire me. It's a tough balance to strike, and I'm like, what do I do? And so they again called me for a second meeting and said, we know you have a business, but there's no conflict of interest because what you're doing, what we're doing, two totally different things. As long as you do our work, as long as our business is done, we don't really care. You can continue doing your own things and balance that. It doesn't get any better than that. And so, I took it. It's on Gong Road. I took it. I had a personal assistant. I had my own office. I had all my expenses paid. My car maintenance, fuel, entertainment. I had all that covered. So I took that up. And because it was a branch that they were starting, it ran for about 9 months or less. And then there was a trip that was looming for a representative to travel abroad. And so guess who gets to go? I got to go. So looking back, if you remember where we started with me having these dreams, wild dreams, while I'm in the village of, one day this overseas, which I had no clue where it was. And really, I'm just fumbling through life without any direction except the desire, to just, go where I'd envisioned myself going. And just a dream to have the life that I envisioned, which was just from the bush, because I had nobody that I had seen live that kind of life. It was just a wild dream. For my family, it really looked like a fantasy that was unachievable. And even though I believe they meant well for me, especially my mom and grandma, who were the ones that I shared with a lot, they feared that my overambition would probably land me into trouble because they could not see how realistically a child from the background that I was from could live the life that I did. But yet they taught me to live by faith, and that's what I held on to. And now looking back, here I am in my mid-20s, and I had dreamt when I was in my teens that one day I'll own a car and I will fly, and then I can die. Now here I am in my mid-20s, I have owned a car, a second one, and I have flown to South Africa. And now I'm about to take them to the skies to the overseas world, really across the oceans. And so, sometimes we should, when you hear do not despise small beginnings, now looking back, it looks like what was once just a dream, and I thought it was a big dream, and I thought, it was achievable, but it looked impossible from where I was. Now looking back, it looks like that was only a glimpse of what was yet to come, and a glimpse of the life that God was preparing me for. So come along, stay tuned, and join me as I take you on the next part of my journey.